back with Congressman Ken Buck of Colorado. Ken, we were talking in the last segment about the collusion between the Biden administration and these big tech platforms. Am I right in saying that while the First Amendment allows private platforms to set their own standards, the moment that the government becomes actively involved, and I want you to talk a little bit about the depth of the involvement. I mean, regular meetings, portals being created for information to be fed into, and also the wide range of topics. It'd be one thing if they said, we're going to focus on, election disinformation because we're trying to protect democracy or the pandemic. But it seems like they are actually censoring information on Afghanistan. They're censoring information. So in other words, they're climate change. They're choosing a whole range of political topics that are legitimately contested between the two parties. They're taking the Biden administration's position as, quote, facts, and rival positions as sort of misinformation. And you've got a whole censorship regime in place right here in the United States. I mean, aren't we facing a kind of crisis? Isn't this a very serious matter?
I think it's absolutely a crisis, and I think it threatens our democracy more than practically any other issue that's out there. I think when you look at the First Amendment, the founders intended the First Amendment to restrict government's activity in the marketplace of ideas, in the free exchange of speech between individuals in this country, particularly as it applies to the press, but also speech in the public square. And that's exactly where these platforms have entered. And they have entered at their own risk, frankly, because a court may very well find that they are now acting as government actors and that they're covered by the First Amendment. And it's a very dangerous area for them to get into because they open themselves up to lawsuits, regardless of the immunity that's applied by Section 230. They will be found, I believe, to be government actors in the public square and can be sued by individuals for suppressing that kind of speech. But the Biden administration, what an absolutely immoral or amoral position that the Biden administration has taken by trying to really determine what types of information the American public gets. And I haven't seen this kind of corruption in the speech area since maybe even LBJ, where he was using all kinds of government agencies, or FDR with the IRS trying to intimidate his opponents. And so we see this in the Democrat Party over and over again. It's dangerous, and I think that these platforms are playing right into what the left wants to do.
I mean, the two pieces of new information I pick up from the article, and some of this, by the way, is coming because of lawsuits that have been filed by the state of Missouri and other places to ferret out this information, is number one, regular meetings between the big tech representatives and the Biden administration. And number two, that these tech platforms have created, at least Facebook has, a portal, almost like a systematic. So it's one thing to say once in a while they want to ban this guy or they want to ban that guy, and this is the Biden administration acting in a kind of random manner. But no, it looks like there's almost a program of censorship in place now. And I couldn't agree more that this is something the courts need to take a look at. How would that process work? Because I know Florida and Texas have passed some laws trying to restrict big tech censorship. What is the mechanism to get this to the attention of the courts so the courts go, yeah, clear First Amendment violation here?
Well, there are really three types of entities that can sue under the Sherman Act and the Clayton Act. And the first is the federal government. I doubt the Biden administration is going to be suing since it was participating in this type of activity. The second group are the state attorney generals, and there's certainly Republican state attorney generals. You mentioned Texas with Ken Paxton, and Florida and Missouri and others that may very well bring a lawsuit along these lines. And then the third is really the grassroots type of enforcement, and that's private parties. And we've had individuals. It wasn't just a meeting between the Biden administration and these platforms to discuss COVID issues or other types of issues, but it was specifically targeting individuals and saying this individual should be deplatformed. And those individuals have a right of action to bring to the courts and complain about their First Amendment rights being infringed by this collusion between big tech and big government.
I mean, I think you're making a critical point here, which is that in the past, if you tried to sue Facebook, they would say, hey, listen, look at the terms that you signed when you came on board. We wrote those terms to be favorable to us, so you're not going to have much of a contractual case of action. But you're saying that there's a new element here, and that when the government gets involved, suddenly you have a right to say my First Amendment rights are being infringed because the U.S. government is trying to regulate my speech, correct?
Absolutely, that's correct. This goes beyond contract to a fundamental right. And while you can enter into a contract that restricts your free speech, these individuals didn't, because they were well outside of the agreement that was being made between government and tech.
Very interesting. Thank you so much, Representative Buck, for coming on the podcast. Love to have you back sometime.
Thank you.